Playing the Radical Latino Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands in the air for New York's very own.
Radical Latino is taking you to another level.
Welcome back, my people. It's your host, the Radical Latino, and I have a very special episode for you guys today. Right now, I am in the studio with Bawdy and Bawdy.
Hey, what's going
now,
on, guys?
I'm going to go across the room, and I'm going to introduce them, and they're going to let you guys know who they are, or whatever the case is, and then I'm going to let you guys listen to a little interview. All right, let's go. So to my left is Lena D.
Hey, this is Lena D.
A little bit more.
All right. So
he's like, give me more, baby.
Like,
what else you got?
All right. What do you want me to give you? So I am originally born and raised in Hempstead, New York, out in Long Island.
Uh-huh.
My family still lives out there, not in that same neighborhood, but close around. And
I didn't know that.
Shout out to Memphis Bleak.
Yeah.
Strong Island, stand up.
Memphis Bleak.
Oh, that's what you said. I thought that's what you said. But
I was like, wait, what? What'd you say? But yeah, so I'm from out there. Salvadorian is where my parents, like my background and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I guess what else do you want to know?
That's good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's good. And then to her left, my right, is my big dude, Wesley.
Hey, what's going on? Yo, you are a hater.
All day, every day, baby.
God.
I'm sorry, I'm not even introduced yet. My fault. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What a mess.
What you hating on?
If the audio
So
gets
messy.
if it gets cut off, it's because of let me stop.
If it gets cut off, it's because I cut Maggie's mic off. I just pulled the cord.
I'm gonna act right. I'm sorry.
I'm Wesley. I'm pretty sarcastic. I'm not from Hempstead. I'm just playing. I grew up in Hempstead, but I'm not from Hempstead. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, specifically Flatbush.
BK, stand up.
Yeah. And for all the ladies out there, you know.
Yo. Hush that up.
Nah, finish that. Finish your statement so that Lena D could snatch the life out of you.
On the description is going to be his number.
Begrudgingly, I'm with Lena D.
What begrudgingly?
He said begrudgingly. Oh,
you need to clean yourself up or be clean
Talking about,
after
I'm
the
messy.
recording.
All the ladies out there like long walks on the beach, you know. You want to
so
come
much.
over in the gantry, you know, in Long Island City. What's
I can't
up?
with you.
Can we cut his mic?
Holla at me.
Yeah.
He's saying all of this with camo shorts and the do-rag.
That's right.
And the Timbs. Don't forget the Timbs.
Oh, yes, the Timbs.
In the summertime.
To his left, my right is Maddie.
Ew.
Hey.
Man.
Oh, you mad? You mad? It's
Get outta
okay.
here.
It's all right. It's fine. So I'm Maddie.
Cut a mic off.
I am from Brooklyn, born and raised. Don't look at me like that. He mad because he moved to Long Island and I stayed. So I'm more official and legit than he is.
This is true.
So what else did you want to know? Oh, I'm Haitian. He left that part out.
Yeah.
So
we both
and
Haitian.
we're cousins.
We're cousins.
There you go.
So
there you go.
they're dating
Yeah.
forever now.
Wesley likes to get smacked around a lot after
Oh,
recording.
that sounds like domestic
Oh, that
abuse.
sounds kind of hot.
Y'all should have
though.
listened. You were on the episode, but we did do an episode about domestic violence. I think Lena D needs to go listen to that one again. Men can't get beat. Don't get it twisted.
Yes, there's a double standard on that, but I'm not going to talk about my past. No, no, I am a victim. No, so I'm with Bawdy and Bawdy here, and I'm gonna actually, for you guys to actually know who they are, I'm gonna give them a small interview. So, by starting this off, what is Bawdy and Bawdy?
Everything. I'm sorry. So we started this iteration of our podcast this year. Last year.
Yeah.
If we sound familiar, you may have known us as No Free Drinks, which was our previous name.
And we were wilding.
So we were definitely a little more outrageous when we were no free drinks. So we
Yeah.
decided to temper ourselves and try to act more adult. Like
We like to talk
failed.
about sex.
We
a lot
barely
before.
tempered ourselves.
That's
Let's
when they
talk
used to
about
record
sex,
in La
baby.
Marina.
True story. True story.
Yo, did La Maria close down though?
I don't know.
It
I've never been
It
there.
actually did, and it was because of maggots
Shootings.
in the was it meals or something like that?
Ew.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true
Honestly, I
or
think
just
I
a
would have
Twitter rumor.
preferred
Yeah.
if it was because of a shooting than because there were maggots in the food.
But first of all, I want to give a shout out to all Dominicans there. They could hustle. They literally got a parking lot, put sand and cat litter in it, and say, "Hey, it's a restaurant." So shout out
Not
to them.
cat
because-
litter.
No, for real.
It's
If you-
real.
It no
Yeah.
fit. It's
Yeah, if you guys ever went
I've
there,
literally never gone.
if you guys ever went there, you guys would exactly know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I think it's a prostitution spot, low key, because all those bottle girls, for some reason, were like coming in there like with stickies on, and I'm like, you're not supposed to wear that.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's hot out, but relax,
still, you can't.
chill.
do
Yeah.
that.
The cat litter though is ingenious because it absorbs all the shit that people drop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then cleanup
Yeah.
is like
I mean,
super
that's
easy.
smart, but we also know that because I'm from Brooklyn, I don't fucks with the Bronx. Sorry.
Well,
Wow.
La Marina is not in the
Sorry.
Bronx for
Wasn't
you guys
it?
to know. No, it's not. So,
Oh,
check
all I
yourself.
knew was people from the Bronx that talked about going there, and I was
It's
like, oh, that means it's
it's
not
a
for me.
Morningside,
It's
right?
like
Morningside Heights or
it's
something?
deep uptown.
Yeah, it's
but-
I think it's
Heights.
higher than
No, it's
Morningside.
It's in
Oh,
Washington
Washington Heights, not
Washington
Morningside.
Heights.
Yeah.
Man, that's borderline the Bronx.
It's far.
Whoa.
We got some Bronx slander.
Yo.
Bronx slander. Remember, the Bronx started
Yeah.
everything. Anyway,
Yeah, I ain't started. Let me stop.
we started everything. Anyway, no, so
Maddie over here trying to like not get us new listeners. What is wrong with you?
Stop. Why you wilding for?
What? For real though, how many of your listeners are from the Bronx? I'm still sorry. The Bronx is popping. Y'all got some really great like nutcrackers and
Hey.
restaurants
And chopped cheese.
What else is in the
chopped
Bronx?
cheese, chopped cheese. Yeah, Batman was invented in the Bronx, by the way.
Yeah,
He was.
for real.
Okay.
If you don't know, 27 rings, the Yankees.
Superman all day. What up?
So for all just the 5 listeners that stayed on.
They're like, who the hell is this? Done.
No, but so you guys started the podcast with no free drinks and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is it all 3 you guys originally, or how did this union start? Ooh, union. I like
Yeah.
that.
So, I mean, we've had with No Free Drinks, our history was all about like, we just wanted to talk about dating, sex, the messiness of like what dating has become given like the internet age and like Tinder and all the apps and stuff. And, but as we talked more about certain topics, and we used to have a different co-host set. So there was another co-host that's no longer with us, but then it opened up an opportunity for Maddie to come on.
Yep.
And with Maddie being on, we actually started to talk more about topics that mattered. So we did do an episode around domestic violence because it is related to relationships, and unfortunately not all relationships end up being like ducks and bunnies and puppies and all the cute stuff, and some relationships end up in tragedy. And there's
Ducks
like
are cute.
Ducks are adorable.
Fuck
have you
outta
ever
here.
seen ducklings? They're so cute.
When they waddle,
Yeah, and the ducklings are amazingly
that.
cute.
quack.
I think he's talking about like Brooklyn ducks. That's
Yeah.
probably what he's
Oh,
talking
them
about.
no, you're thinking about geese.
Yeah.
Geese is
Oh,
aggressive
okay.
as
Yeah,
shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
about. I'm
Yeah,
like,
no.
a geese will like give you $1.50.
For real, straight up. It will run up on you and be like, yo, I saw you looking at my girl. Ducks are
They
cute.
will run up right beside you, be like, yo. I'm like, am I getting street harassed by a geese?
Absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Hey, mama with the yeeks. Hey, come here.
Yeah.
But that's how we started talking about these other topics that mattered. And then with the whole climate around just the fact that women were given more of a platform to talk about like the Me Too movement and to talk about like instances of either sexual abuse or harassment, we actually started to pivot our podcast in a direction where it was like, hey, we want to be more socially conscious, but we also want to talk about these issues from like our generational point of view. And also our
I still wanted to
background.
be ratchet.
Yeah, like, and also our background too, because like I grew up in Long Island, but if people really know where Hempstead is, it's not the
Hood.
safest place
Hood.
ever. It's like gangs, all this, and so like having the fact that like, hey, we grew up like our background. It's like, hey, we grew up like very like, how do they say it? And I'm just thinking of the Spanish version right now with like having like limited resources and like honestos and like stuff like that, like just being very humble. And so we've been able to like chart our own paths, and it's like, yeah, like what we have the fortune of like having as a lifestyle now isn't the lifestyle that we had growing up, and we come from very humble beginnings. But you know what? Like, it's important to talk about these issues that still impact our communities. And so we focus a lot of our content around like issues of social injustice, issues that impact communities of color. But at the same time, it's like, hey, we still like boozy brunches and being ratchet, and like, you know, we are who we are. And so we try to bring our own perspectives into those issues. And so we talk the gamut now from a full range of topics. And that's what Bold and Body is. It's like, hey, as we have to be bold in like what our dreams are, what we want to do. We have to be ourselves. We have to embrace who we are, even if we are working in like corporate America or these other places where we typically haven't had a seat. And we are still Body, because a part of us, like, we can't change who we are. We're not going to like whitewash ourselves, even though like ever. Like, it's not, even though like, especially having my parents come from El Salvador and having come from immigrant backgrounds, like part of it is like, hey, you have to assimilate into American culture. And so part of what we say is like, well, no, we have like our identities, we have our cultures, we have who we are, and we're not going to like change that for anybody. So Bold and Body is all about embracing who you are, but also kind of arming yourself and staying woke with the viewpoints and like having an understanding of the issues that are at play, whether it's political, societal, or economical, and sort of like just going forward and getting your best shit done for yourself. Yeah. And so that's what Bold and Body is about.
So it's safe to assume that Maddie is the reason why you guys got woke?
Yeah.
No. We've been woke before, but...
Okay. So, although we changed our platform when I came on, it wasn't to say that the last host that I replaced was limiting. It's just that I'm more vocal on these things. So even when we were no free drinks,
we said
there were still conversations that we had that were more towards social justice. Yeah. So because it was just like, well, and we all felt that we can't limit ourselves to just talk about dating. Right. We can't limit ourselves to just talking about these things, especially if we're talking about dating. And we're also going to talk about the social impact of who you date and all those things. So it was, when I came on, we just became more open and acknowledged like, hey, we should just be open to expanding what we talk about, who we are. And we realized that if we continue to operate under no free drinks, we weren't going to be able to do that in the way that we wanted to. So that's why we went for the rebranding.
She said,
but I don't mind taking the credit.
She said all of this with a she said all of this with a kufi and the unk on,
with the fist up and the pick in the back of my throat.
When I got here, she gave me alkaline water. And she was like, "Here you go, my brother." I'm like, "Damn." So
gave him a little crystal cleansing and everything. I talked about his chakras.
She was like, "Ashe,
open up your third eye, my brother."
So, with the rebranding from No Free Drinks to Bold and Body, have you guys seen a positive transition on your guys' platform?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. 100%.
I think our listeners definitely enjoy our foolishness and the tomfoolery that was Bold, that was No Free Drinks. Yeah. But that's still here with Bold and Body.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And then we're just also talking more to everything that we know. We're not saying that we're experts in everything, but between the three of us, like, we have a lot of experience. We've seen a lot. We've done a lot. We've grown a lot. And I think especially in this climate, that's something that our listeners wanted to hear. So yeah, they want to talk about, or they want to hear us talk about dating and like how to meet someone and dealing with the fuckery that is Tinder. But then it's just like, at the same time, I have to go to work and I have to deal with my boss not wanting to pay me what I'm worth. Gotcha. You know, so it's just like, we could talk about all of those things.
Yep.
And I like the balance that you guys do, because you guys will go in from relationship to some, little fuckery or whatever. Yeah. And you guys mesh it very well with social issues, and since, I don't know if you guys ever heard their podcast, they got, seasons already set up. This is like Netflix, you know what I'm saying? You guys can look it up. But in certain episodes, they do have little tidbits of their, employment and their things that they do actually work outside of this. You know, they're working class people. We're in a high rise, by the way.
Yep.
We're working. They're working class people. So I want to ask all three of you guys. You guys could take turns. Inner work racism. What have you guys experienced? And with that experience, what did you guys learn from that?
Okay.
Wesley, you could go first if you want.
Wesley, you want to go first?
Because I feel like you're ready. I
don't know. Inner work racism. I'll say probably like.
He has a Black Panther shirt right now, by the way.
Yeah. I'll say like, I wouldn't say racism, but it's more like, I'll say like aggressions, like microaggressions, where like this didn't happen to me. I think not my last job, but the job before that, where I came from working out and I didn't shower as much. And
what you mean as much?
As much as in like I was rushing.
You took like a half shower?
I took like a
hobo bath?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's done. You know, put my shirt on, whatever. My hair is still
So you
kind of wet because my hair kind of nappy.
You
whatever.
Talk that shit.
And
Wesley.
then like
talk that shit.
You smell like a hot
boss
ass.
came up and was just like, "Oh, so hey, how you doing?" And was touching my head. And
What the fuck you mean you touched your head?
I don't like that shit.
You should have punched him in the throat.
And I really thought about it too.
I do not encourage
Why did he
violence.
touch your head?
I don't like. He's never touched my head before. He'll touch my shoulder, like good job or whatever, like on my shoulder and stuff.
Now I'm gonna give you.
Like,
I'm gonna give you
personal
this.
space.
I'm gonna throw the ball at you with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Have you or anybody experienced? You know, when something's happening, like let's say Colin Kaepernick kneeling. Usually, I see a lot of white people going to non-white people and saying, "Hey, what's up, bro? What about this Colin Kaepernick thing? You know, what do you think about that? It's crazy, right?"
Well, okay,
Manny felt that one. Manny
Yeah.
felt that one.
I did.
So I
she
guess
felt that.
in my scenario, because I usually hang out with like in that job, I would hang out with like a very small crew of like white guys or whatever, and we were all a mixed bag, right?
Call them what you want, Yakubian.
Yeah. All right. So hang out with a bunch of Yakubians.
Wesley's like, look, I was trying to act right. I was trying to act right, and you don't want me to be good.
Y'all want me to fall?
Like, I'm trying to be a better person.
That was
guys.
Dr. Yakub.
Yeah.
Let me chill.
I got like threatened at my last job for something that I said in the last episode. We don't talk about it another time.
Because you're reckless.
That was not reckless. It was
All
the
right.
truth.
All right.
I don't like that.
Speak the truth, my brother.
I won't speak on this one though.
Yeah, you gotta temper.
It's very tempting, but I'm not gonna do it. But
Say his name. No, let me stop.
say his
Let
name.
me stop.
But when we're around each other, like we'll talk that talk. But it's like if somebody's like that's outside, I guess the work squad says that shit, we all look at them like,
the fuck?
fuck you doing?
It's like, who do you think you are?
Yeah. But
That I
for
had
me,
a
it's just like,
slightly
yeah.
different experience. So, as you said, most of us do. We all work in some form of corporate environment.
yeah.
I was a finance major, and it started from undergrad being like one of the few black people in the room, and then being usually the only black woman in the room. So that started just from classes, or I'm like, so no other black people want to major in finance? None of y'all? All right, fuck you, student. So it was always like, what is she doing here type thing. But then when it got to working, there were a few more, and I worked for like a major accounting firm that's actually very good in terms of diversity. So especially like when I want to say it was like in 2015, 16, when there was constantly all of those shootings that were happening, the CEO actually sent out an email, like company wide, to address it. So that environment, I was very surprised of the inclusion that was there. And although I was usually the only black person, especially on most of the teams that I worked with there were a lot of other immigrants. So I wasn't the only person that understood our struggle in that sense. So it was easier to have those conversations. But when a white person did come along, it was very rare that they spoke from a place that wasn't authentic. So usually, this isn't like all of them, but usually it'd be like, hey, help me to understand this. Like, I see the riots, I see everything that's going on. Help me to understand why. And I know that's not a norm in most corporate settings. But in the same place, I did have one of my white coworkers like reach out and touch my hair and be like, "Oh my God, I love your braids." And I had to be like,
No.
"Susie,
Do not.
like, I don't know why they love touching our hair." And granted, it was like just one of those halo braids. It was nice because my hair be pumping. But I really had to stop her and be like, it was the you remember like when your mom hit you and you'd be like, "How the fuck she move this fast?" Right? I like gathered the speed of my ancestors in that moment because I saw her hand coming. I was like, "What is you doing?" And she was just like, "Oh, I just like, no, you do not touch a black woman's hair ever." And she's just like, "But why?" And it was because I knew like her. It wasn't a like, well, why not? It was like, I don't understand.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was one of those where I'm like, I can
fuck that. She understood. You should have just slept. Let me say.
But yeah, like in that setting, but where I'm working now, if any of like, again, I'm the only black person in my department. The department, not in my space, the department. If any of them tried that shit, nah, straight up going to HR. Like, excuse me, Kathy and Susie said some shit, and I know that it wasn't coming from a place of wanting to learn. So you really definitely have to know your environment. Because sometimes these white people, they will try the shit out of you.
Yeah, they will.
They will. But if you know them and you know, like, okay, this is coming from a place of actually wanting to learn, because some of them will also just try to start some shit where it's just like, did you hear about that Colin Kaepernick guy or that character's like, first of all, fuck you. Yeah. Secondly, get away from my desk. Yeah.
It's like, I'm not having this conversation.
Get away from me.
Others where it's just like, well, I don't understand why everybody's so mad. And it's like, well, Kathy, it's because Lando Castile just got shot. Okay, did your son get shot while he was just like driving down the street? Well, that's never happened to me.
Yeah, it's funny because when
he said,
when those,
I have a license to carry.
Yeah, it's funny when those people, do experience what we experience. They're actually usually, school shootings and stuff, and that's when they really care about, gun violence and all this other stuff. But anyway, going to Lena D.
So I would say that most of the microaggressions that I have experienced haven't been because of being a person of color. It's been more around, I think, just being a woman. And so I don't have many stories where people are trying to touch my hair or people are asking me, actually with my name sometimes, they've had questions like in the office and stuff. But I would say the biggest one would be around just being a woman. And so I'll give you a couple of examples where I've had to have conversations with coworkers around like certain things that need to get done. And men specifically feel that it's completely okay to refer to me as a smart girl.
I'm a grown-ass woman.
I'm a grown-ass woman. Mm-hmm. And I'm giving you direction on things that need to get done. Like I have experience, like I've worked at other corporate environments, like I have an MBA. There's no reason why you should be calling me.
That doesn't mean a
girl.
basketball team, guys. Just like
No, it's the M, not the N.
She be dribbling on motherfuckers. She's like, hold that, Susan.
But I would say like a lot of the things are more related to microaggressions around my gender. And so there's been being called a smart girl, which I immediately was just like, well, it's not about being smart or anything, but like I have experience and this is what needs to get done. Mm-hmm. And so immediately addressing that. I've also had instances where like my approach has been questioned. So like I've had previous male managers also say, hey, you're too aggressive and straightforward. You should probably temper down how you speak to people.
You give them
in giving direction in how I run business. But I'm pretty sure that would never get said to a man.
Nope.
So those are the things that I've experienced. I think I've been lucky enough and privileged enough that like, I have straight hair. I don't have like Afrocentric hair. Like I don't have the kinks or any of that. I know that in my face, I don't look like a white Latino. I look more indigenous, but that I don't think is something that in corporate America people have gotten to think about yet, because it's more around the issue of black versus white. And so because I fall in the middle of that, it's not something that comes back to my ethnicity or my race. I also don't have an accent, so people can't talk like people. I have seen people talk about accents being an issue, specifically when it's working with other people of color, specifically from Latin America. And so
I thought you were gonna say Indians.
Well, yeah, but like people say that too. But in the cases where I've actually been there and I feel impacted by it because I am Latina. It's like, well, in that environment, and I was just like, well, let me try to be at least an ally to the cause. And so I was like, well, if you guys don't understand what they're saying, I was like, I can just run this meeting in Spanish and I can report back to you guys, because there's going to be more productivity if we actually run the meetings in Spanish versus trying to do them in English. And like, that's what I have done to sort of like steer the conversation. So it's not about like, oh my God, I don't understand what Jose is saying. And like, this can't get done and it's going to delay everything. And it's just like, listen,
I'm gonna just kick you in the chest.
How about I just run the meetings? You're not adding any value because you don't understand what they're saying. Yeah. So let's just change the course of how things are getting done. Or in the case where
I don't speak reggaeton, so can you please,
sir? You did not just say I don't speak reggaeton.
Yes, because I've heard that before.
That's not a thing. It's not a thing.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I don't. Oh Lord Jesus.
And I think Jesus. The other thing too is like seeing the microaggressions and calling them out, because I've also been in situations where, again, it's a male manager or a man saying, oh, well, I used to work in finance at one point and we were looking to hire a junior person to come in. I had just interviewed 2 people. And one of the women was like, the woman that I was interviewing was really well qualified. The man had absolutely no experience. Like, he wasn't going to be able to do anything in this role. And so the VP of that company comes in and says, oh, I think such and such, I forgot the guy's name at this point, it doesn't matter, but I think the man is a great fit for this job. And I was like, well, I disagree. I think the woman is a good fit for this job. And then he was like, well, I just like him more because, he's a guy. And I was like,
oh, he straight up said that.
He said that directly.
I remember this. I know his name. Yeah. Hold up.
And so I was like,
say it.
And I was like, well, to be clear, I was like, to be clear, we're supposed to be hiring the best talent to do the job. We're low on resources. I don't understand why we're trying to make this conversation about gender. And then he's like, no, that's not what I was trying to say. And I was like, I understood what you were trying to say. I'm still telling you who's more qualified. I'm not recommending the other person. And so it's more of like standing your ground too and calling out the microaggressions. Because sometimes they're not even microaggressions, they're literally full on aggressions, like macroaggressions. Yeah,
I was going to say, that wasn't micro at all. He said it straight to your face.
Macro, and Macklemore aggressions.
Yeah. And so I would say, like, there's just the need to just call it out when it happens, because otherwise nothing's going to change. All right, so let's get right into it. So obviously this is a collab episode between Bold and Bawdy and the Radical Latino. Woo-woo. And so, of course, we're going to keep it real. We're going to stay woke, but we're also going to dig deep into, like, the concepts that, white supremacy and racism. So I know sometimes we've kind of covered it, but we're actually going to get deep into it. And so on this week's episode, we're talking about how those are intertwined, and we're going to make it fun too. And we're actually going to talk about movies and shows. So that'll be an interesting point. And also how we can stop perpetuating the toxicities that come along with white supremacy and racism too. So, Radical Latino, why don't you just take it and go into like really breaking it down for us in terms of like white supremacy, what that means, and how people should be thinking about it as it relates to racism.
All right. So before I even start off with white supremacy, let's, for those sensitive people out there, let's define what white supremacy is. Mm-hmm. Does not mean all white people. I don't talk about that. White supremacy is white supremacist and non-racist white people. We got to keep the definition clear. And what the definition means, people who are classified as white, who mistreat and abuse people who are classified as non-white. That's been the working definition all along. So white supremacy encompasses 9 areas of activity within people in the areas. So one of those areas is entertainment, which goes into media, which goes into television, magazines, movies, radio, everything all around, and under the sun, So the main focal point that I'd like to focus on, which is white supremacy, and the person who coined white supremacy is Nellie Fuller. For those who don't know who Nellie Fuller is, he's a person that basically coined the term white supremacy. He wrote a book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept Textbook. So that textbook basically breaks down everything what white supremacy is and how it affects us daily. And also he breaks it down in 9 areas of activity. So white supremacy in movies is supposed to encompass everything positive about white folks, everything positive about a white savior. You can't have a movie or an image of a strong black person without having a white savior to actually save the whole movie. Or it's going to have, tacky parts where black folks are being either made fun of or being perpetuated in a negative way in that movie, where white people are just, playing it up, to have black folks, feel some type of way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They always have to be the heroes.
Yeah. So that's what basically encompasses by. So if you guys want to give your takes on that.
So I think what I find really interesting, at least about Nellie's book and concept, is just the fact that I think most people think about racism as its own thing. And I think for the longest time, there has not been an acknowledgement that racism is still live and thriving. Mm-hmm. People have always said, oh, I'm not, people think I'm a racist. Why are people still talking about racism? We're past that. And the reality is that we're not past it, especially because the other flip of the coin is that racism is tightly tight with the concept of white supremacy. And so the reason why racism exists is because white supremacy exists. And you can't get rid of racism until you eradicate white supremacy. And so I think what people really need to think about is that that racism and white supremacy perpetuate injustice in society. And so when you break it down to the most fundamental elements, it's the fact that because we haven't gotten justice for those that experience racism, there's really little progress that can be had in the world. And in America, there's a very there's history around why it's like this, but there's also history in other nations of why it's like this. And so what I would urge people to really think about is how can you as an individual challenge both racism and white supremacy and trying to find more justice for those communities that are impacted. So the victims of white supremacy. And so that's something that I thought was very powerful from Nellie's work. And it's basically in those areas of activity that you mentioned, we all have the duty, as especially those people that are more subjectable to white supremacy and subjected to racism, is that we really just need to question what is out there, and do what we can that's in our power to make sure that we're not just falling in line with what, whether it's a movie, whether it's what somebody's saying in the workplace, just trying to fall in line with what we think might be the status quo, but there's always room for progress and there's always room for change. And so I think that's what's really important about his work, is that he's really pressing people to take ownership over their own destinies and doing something about it, not just being a victim of the white supremacy or racism. But yes, it exists, but there's also ways that we can move forward and change that dynamic. So I thought that was very powerful. And I hope that it's something that as we talk through it today, that we can help people see how they can become empowered by just having a knowledge of that concept and that philosophy.
All right. I got a question to ask, right, for all the uninitiated. So how do you exactly change that narrative? as a whole?
I feel like Lena D spoke on it by saying like having that knowledge and understanding of it is the first part.
Right.
And also just understanding the breadth of it. I think a lot of people feel like the reason why you hear a lot of people oftentimes say racism and white supremacy is a thing of the past is because at this point in time, it has just been repackaged. It's not the same look anymore. It's not a group of men in white hoods like riding around and burning crosses in their front yard. That's usually the first image that comes to people's mind when they think white supremacy and racist. So they're like, if there's no KKK anymore and there aren't lynchings anymore and this isn't happening anymore, then clearly it's a thing of the past. And it's like, no, it's just been repackaged.
United States Senate.
Exactly. So now we're talking about how it affects our communities, how it affects the opportunities that we, our peers, our children, our parents have. We have to look at it in terms of the prison industrial complex. So it's no longer that image that we had of it before. So if you're going to be blinded to it because it's like, oh, there's no more KKK prevalent, then it's no longer a problem. And it's like, no, what you need to understand is how it looks now, how it's been changed now, and what the impact of it. It still has the same impact of being oppressive to people. It's just no longer as blatant. And sometimes it's not as physically dangerous.
And that's the thing that we have to focus on with words. Nellie Fuller talks about words are very important. Words could get you out of things and could get you into things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, words are very, very important. I'm a piggyback on what she said about images. Yeah, we don't see the hooded white people walking around here, you know, talking about go back home. They turned in their hoods.
They took off the hoods.
Yeah, they turned in their hoods and put on suits.
Oh,
and now
I was thinking about the MAGA hats.
Oh, the red ones, the red hat.
They put on suits and MAGA hats, and now that's the new symbol of the KKK. White supremacy always evolves. They always play chess, and we're out here playing checkers, thinking that we're playing the same game. And we have to learn how to actually call those things out, see it, and actually learn how to either skirt it or fight it. You feel what I'm saying? So with things like that, now we have the Proud Boys. Now we have Richard Spencer's thing, which is the alt-right, the alt-light. You know, we have to start learning little things because they go and hide within words and codes. For, I think, was it 2 years now, there was a Keck flag that was running around these white supremacist communities. And people were just thinking, hey, it's a green flag with just a little clover on the front, not knowing that this Keck flag was actually empowering white supremacy.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people didn't know that. Now, new symbols like the OK symbol is being used as a way to basically tell other white supremacists, hey, listen,
I got you.
I'm with you. You know, they're throwing it up in pictures in the White House to the point where people are talking in the Senate, and they're throwing up this OK symbol right behind people who are talking, you know? So these are little things that we have to call out. And we have to really, you know, get away from people who are naysayers who say, well, you really don't know that. You know, that's just the OK symbol.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And again,
you haven't been on 4chan lately.
Again, we have to learn with words. We have to learn how to define what words are and how, because white supremacists are masters at words. They're masters on saying the same thing that you're calling them out on differently. Oh, no, this is not it. It's just, you know, the OK symbol. And then when you point it out, no, it's not. It's actually the white power thing. Yes, it was a joke, but now you guys indoctrinated it to your own thing. Well, you know what? You're reaching. You know what? You know what I'm saying? So things like that. We have to learn how to call these things out. And these are very important when we talk about images. Images is very important.
Absolutely.
And so I think part of it too, and so I like that you bring up sort of this chess versus checkers, right? And so I think even with like day to day, and as we think about entertainment and media and images, I do want to spend some time talking about like what are some shows and movie titles that actually completely flip the narrative of like what it means to empower people of color, and really they come out seeming to want to talk about and give like put the communities of color in the right light, but they're actually doing the complete opposite of it. And so like thinking about what initially people might think is the message ends up not being the message of that specific movie or entertainment, but then also the fact that where we might think that because there's a Black protagonist or a Latino or Latina protagonist that they're trying to uplift our communities, they're actually doing the complete opposite. And so there's a couple examples that we really want to dig into because it becomes crazy once you start peeling the onion of what the message of that movie really was. And so the first one is called Where Hands Touch. And so Maddie, please tell us about this fuckery. This situation.
I'm glad you said it because it's exactly what I was about to say.
Yo, man, Rue broke my heart.
We will also like to preface this whole section by saying we have not watched these movies. And right? Can we agree? None of us have watched any of these movies.
I've
just
actually
watched the trailer.
But Rue still.
Yeah, I mean the trailer, but the actual movie or show.
So I've actually did watch one of the shows that we're going to talk about.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, are you the second one?
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah, I did it for research purposes.
Yeah.
Oh, you lying? He was just he had his popcorn and was just like, "This is good."
It's on my Netflix queue. Like you seen this? Maybe you like. No. Only
that is how it popped up on mine also. And I was like, what the hell is this bullshit?
Yeah, I only saw 3 episodes, and I'm like, I'm done. I got real first.
Okay, we'll get to that one. Yeah. So that's another one. Okay, so then I'm only going to speak for this particular movie. We have not watched the whole movie.
We have not watched it. No,
we do not know how it started, ended. We've only seen the trailer, but the trailer was enough for us to feel like it was very problematic. So as Lena Sadi said, the title of this movie was Where Hands Touch. It came out last year in 2018. Towards the end of the year, it was a very silent release. And you're about to find out why. So it was written and directed by Ama Asante, who, before you even try to come at anybody, I do want to say she is a Black woman from the UK. Don't get it twisted. All your skin folk ain't kinfolk. Don't forget it. She also has made 2 other historic dramas. So that's her thing. She does like historic dramas. And they tend to focus on interracial relationships developing despite racial tensions and discrimination. So that's her thing, right? And it sounds good, right?
It's not
like it's.
No, like
I like when you
life.
First hear that, it's just like, okay, yeah, Black people did exist. Why weren't we represented in those spaces? Think about how many historic dramas there are with a Black person who's not a slave or a servant. So it's like what you were saying, where it's just like, oh shit, we feel like it's representation. But then let me tell you what this movie is about before you get your hopes up. So the whole premise, don't get your hopes up. The whole premise is that a young biracial girl, this is played by Amanda Stenberg. Did you say Rue? Oh, Rue. I wish I could whistle so I could do the thing.
Hunger Games.
Yes. So if you don't know who Amanda Stenberg is, she was Rue from the Hunger Games. She's been in a whole bunch of different movies. As of the most recent one was The Hate You Give, which was crazy to me because the Hate You Give came out the same year that this came out. And it's like complete opposites it's just completely opposite. So yeah, she's a biracial girl and she falls in love with a young man. Oh my God, I hate romance stories. Let me not. But she falls in love with a young man who is part of the Hitler Youth.
Okay, that's enough.
In Nazi Germany.
Stop.
And his father is a prominent Nazi soldier.
Uh-uh.
She falls in love with a young man who's part of Hitler Youth. And I was just like,
you Black. What
the fuck? What?
So with this, just by hearing this, you guys already should know what the image that they're trying to, purvey here is. You know,
love conquers all.
Exactly.
Love conquers all. There is nothing that
While you're getting
love
gas and your body burned after you've died.
Yeah.
So my whole thing, honestly, when I first saw it, before they introduced the love story part of it, my initial response was, there should have been black people in Germany at this time. Like, why hasn't there been a movie about any black Germans? This is so true, right?
Or you never even see them in any of the movies.
Ever, not
like,
even
any
in the
portrayals,
background.
Like, nowhere.
There's never been a I cannot think. And if there is a movie where there's black people in Germany, y'all let me know. But I could not
Red
think.
Wings?
Who?
Red Wings? Isn't that?
No, yeah, but that's like.
That's not right.
I'm talking about Germans, though.
No.
And I'm pretty sure that there
Schindler's
were
List,
black
maybe?
people there.
Historically, I think was it Shark Island? A bunch of black people died during World War II because of Germans and stuff. But yeah, no, of course.
But
Schindler's List, maybe? No?
I don't remember seeing
I
any
don't
black
recall
people
seeing
in
that.
that.
Wasn't that also in black and white? Shut up.
That's true. Too.
Shut up.
Hey, what about the X-Men when he has flashbacks and being?
There's that one black person in the background like,
Exactly.
who
That's
is
what
not
I'm
a slave or a servant.
Oh, God.
Remember.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, no, damn.
So,
Let's think
like,
hard,
when
guys.
I first saw this, I was just like, oh, shit. Like, yes, tell me the story of black people in Germany during this time.
Why?
Like, again,
Because
I've never seen it.
There's curiosity
So,
around it.
again, initially,
That's curious enough.
no, I'm just
I don't like
saying,
hearing that shit
like,
either. It's
I
messed
would
up.
have, initially, I would have liked to hear that story.
No, but there's like, I mean, obviously there were people like black, like whoever it is that thinks that there's a place in the world where there aren't black people. Like, I just don't think that's how it works. Like they're
Well,
there.
they did invade North Africa, so
And
it
but
would have
then
come from that.
but
Then there
Well,
still
that
weren't
likely-
even movies that depicted
They did,
that.
yeah.
That's what I'm
That's
saying.
true.
Like,
Right.
whenever we have this conversation about Nazi Germany, there's never any people of color. So that's how it started to pique my interest. And I was just like, oh shit. Honestly, like I saw this trailer and I was just like, oh shit. There had to have been at least one black person there. At least one black person who was just like, nah, bruh, don't go that way. They down there. Like, there had to be one. And then I saw the rest of the trailer and I was like, look at this fuckery. Because it's just like, there's scenes where it's just like, she's talking to him and she's just like, we can't be. And he's like, but I love you. All sorts of bullshit like that. But my father, yeah, your father's literally murdering Jews, but I still love you. We can be together.
She touched me. I felt something.
That means we go together now. No. That is not what that means.
I'm gonna be becoming an occurring guest.
He's like, I want to sit next to Maddie. No, but it's like we should have done the where hands touch. Our hands touched right here.
That's the picture of the episode. Oh, wow.
No. But for real though, it could have been a good story.
Nah.
But
Now, when you tell me she getting in love with some,
that's what I'm saying.
No,
once
but-
once
no,
it
but-
gets to that part,
Right.
that's where I think most of us are lost. And there was a lot of outcry about it, and there was a lot of outrage. And it was one of those cases where she was interviewed, and she pretty much said, she's like, but I want people to actually watch the whole movie. And it's like, nah,
No,
bruh,
it's-
this is problematic.
Well, like, because it ignores the narrative. And so I know, Wesley, you were just like, no, like, it's fucked up. Like, and so what I mean by curiosity is like the fact that like our stories, and when I say our stories, I mean stories of Black people, stories of like
Brown
Latino,
people, all
Latina,
of
brown
us.
people, like those stories are often not told in the mainstream media.
I get it, but why would I put my economic, I guess, resources to something like this?
Right. No, but
That
that's what
portrays
That's
this
the
kinda
whole thing
image.
that we're saying.
That's my-
not
I don't like
this
that.
particular story.
All right.
We're saying a story where it represents people of color in this time and place, because there is none. And the fact that this is the fuckery that we got
is bullshit.
is bullshit.
And I think you guys, the listeners, are going to start hearing a reoccurring theme here, where I'm going to just go back to Nelly Fuller's code, is we have a relationship with white supremacists as the 3 T's. Has anybody heard what the 3 T's are?
Nah.
Please tell us.
The relationships that we have with the 3 T's between non-white people and white people are terroristic, tacky, and trashy. So if you guys break down all these movies and shows that we actually going to start discussing, you guys will actually see the trashy, the tackiness, the terroristic part of all these movies and shows and images. We can't have a positive portrayal on TV because it's dominated by white supremacy. And because of that, that's the reason we have shit like this where hands touch, and it's completely trashy, completely trashy. Regardless if we know historical facts that slave masters used to have sex with their slaves, and they used to bear their children. Love didn't take them out of slavery. You know what I'm saying? So with things like this, the message that they're trying to say is love conquers all and stuff. But look at the actions that they're doing. Look at what the narrative is underlining what they're really trying to say, Yeah.
Right.
So I do want to say that she did come out and say, and I quote, "This wasn't a movie that was ever going to have, let's just say, a romantic ending. When people talk about it as a romance and romanticizing Nazism, that is the one thing this movie does not do. I hope that people walk away being really, really clear about the story that I have tried to tell. I hope that people walk away moved." So could it be a rush to judgment? Absolutely. But based on the representation in the trailer, it's not drawing anybody in to be like, let me give this a chance.
You're talking to the same person who watched Richard Spencer get punched in the face 20 times and laughed the whole time. So for me,
you counted?
Oh yes, I did. Every time it was more glorious than the last time I saw it.
Since we haven't seen the movie, I'm gonna just assume. Let me just guess. The girl doesn't get the guy. He either dies, somebody dies, or it's some like sort of Romeo and Juliet type of thing that they can't be together because of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I feel like that's probably what it is.
No, I feel like what it is. She died in the end.
Get out of here with that.
Or she somehow escaped or something.
But even then, it's just like, you can't ask. So there was backlash around it. And then there was like, she was interviewed about it. And then she asked people to go and like watch her movie again.
And give her a chance.
And that's like, but then again, it's, you're basically asking people who don't see a connection to the story, who don't feel like they're going to be represented in the way that they would want to be represented through the story, to support something financially. Mm-hmm. Because you're not saying, here's a free screening for everybody that feels that my movie's trash. I'm going to like prove you wrong. I'm going to show you that it's a different storyline. You're basically telling people to just go out and watch it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, supporting you economically for your project. But if this movie was actually intended to motivate the people that are criticizing her, she didn't do it. She didn't go about the right way. Yeah, and so if there was a story that she really wanted to tell and that she wanted people to actually rally behind that cause, then that should have been a part of the conversation to begin with. It should have been what was reflected in the trailer. And so it goes back to like the images of what's being portrayed in this content is that for those of you that only see the trailer, you'll come away from it saying, well, okay, this is like, again, a white savior. Like people need, like basically love conquers all because a black woman fell in love with a white man. And that's enough. But like, that's not anything different from what has already been portrayed in the media before. So like, how is this different from anything else?
You guys got to remember also that this movie needed to be greenlit. So that means it had to go through numbers of people in production, in the script, in God knows every other way to marketing. And this bullshit was, okay, sure. Let's go along with it. But if any one of you guys could please Google who actually wrote the script.
Oh, I'm already on it.
She wrote it.
Oh, she wrote it?
She wrote and directed it.
And also, was it co-written or co-produced?
I'm looking at the production company who decided to do this.
Because this had to be at least one person go like,
they got fired.
You know what I'm saying?
Man,
They
Sony
spoke
losing
again.
out here.
It was
losing.
a Sony
Oh, Sony?
movie?
Yeah, Sony. It
Notice
says
how there was
they
very little
acquired
press
the
about it.
Yeah, acquired the international distribution rights to the film, excluding selected territories in Europe and Australia. Y'all losing. That's why I got hacked a couple years back. Get out of here. Watch no damn shit like that.
But I think it was intentional. They knew like this probably isn't gonna rock. We're probably not gonna have the kind of viewership. So that's why it was not pushed the same way here that it may have been internationally. And again, it's very easy for us to immediately think, oh, with a storyline like this, it must be it must not be a person of color that's writing this, that's producing this, that's behind this. So we can't always make that assumption that like we're all in this together or we're the same kind of allies.
Right.
Because no, not everybody's going to think the way you do.
And we have to remember also, unfortunately, even if we have our people behind the wheel, moving, doing what they got to do and actually pushing a project along, that does not mean they have our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
For example, we have a lot of, Black and Latin politicians out here, police chiefs who decimate the community a lot worse than just regular white supremacists. Do we blame them? Yeah. But in the end of the day, we have to know what they're backed by. That's what we have to know. So this is another form of white supremacy, putting our own people in the forefront because behind the scenes, they get controlled.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
It's funny because I was reading this article, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where Lena Waithe had she came up and said, for anyone who don't know Lena Waithe is the comedian that's on what's that show with Aziz Ansari?
I don't think she's I wouldn't characterize her as a comedian.
That's
she's
the
an
Netflix
actress.
one, right?
Yeah, the Netflix one. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like the best hit, like his childhood best friend or whatever. They would hang out all the time. She was even making.
She's behind The Shy. She's behind quite a few shows.
Right.
Movies, yeah.
But she made like this big distinction. She was just like, well, what I don't understand is how come, all more prominent like Black and brown actors don't put money behind independent films. Like she's like, if I make like $20 million, I'm at least putting like, my money behind 3 of those films. So that way they come up. And she was shouting out Ava DuVernay with her documentary.
Shout out to her.
But she was just like, there are very few of those out there. And I think she name shotted Denzel
and Will Smith.
And Will Smith. Like they don't put money behind like these independent films. And yeah. So,
but how does she know?
How does she know?
Where they're putting their money?
She's in there. She's in the circle of the folks. That,
I don't know about this. Because the one thing I never like is when people try to tell other people what to do with their money or how they're spending their money.
That I
like
get.
You don't know if they're not giving money to these projects under different names.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to.
But she, in the article, she made like this distinction where there was a movie that came out. It was like an all black cast that was funded by Brad Pitt of all people. You're like, what? I forget what the names of the movies were, but yeah. So
yeah, because you got to remember, this is like you said, Maddie.
I was like, did he call me Manny?
like you said, we don't know what they're gonna fund or
how they give back to the community. How they give back.
Yeah. The thing
it's true.
Is, we also have to look at the history of action. We actually have to see the history of, okay, they haven't given to this, but what else are they going to give to?
Right.
Yeah.
True.
So we have to, either see a reoccurring thing.
Because at the same time, she's talking about this, but Denzel and Felicia Rashad also gave how much scholarship money that put Chadwick Boseman through school.
Right.
That put so many black actors and actresses through school.
And also,
so are we just going to
I'm not saying that there's a discount on that, but I'm just saying that I think where she's coming from is more from like a, you know, a production standpoint, like a distribution standpoint, not necessarily like, you know, building up the next wave of actors, but actually building up the next wave of owners. You know what I mean?
Actually,
I get it, but we're
digressing.
Going to just piggybacking off of that. For all you people who want to date white, remember?
Wait, where do we just go?
Shots fired.
But
I need you to put up like a bullet soundtrack. Like,
who want to date white? The person under Lucas, the guy
Lucasfilms.
Lucasfilms. What's that guy's name? George
Lucas.
George Lucas. He actually has a black wife. For those who don't know,
yes,
she basically nags him to make in black films. Like he actually made a couple of black films. Like he actually donated to a lot of black colleges,
right?
Black owned businesses. Mm-hmm. He does a lot because his woman is behind him saying, "Yeah, you have to do this.
You do it."
So, for all those who want to date white, use that white money to empower your own community. All right, that's about it.
Moving on.
I'm glad that's where that went because I got scared for a moment.
Yeah.
I was like,
I was just like, where's this going to go?
See your closest white person get a knife. No.
I was like, oh man, this is the last time we do this collab. But no, that was this movie.
There's more.
There's so much more.
Yeah.
I know there was one in particular that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, So in that specific one, I was really surprised that the director and the writer is a woman of color, and so we like to think around using our positions, like if we're people of color in power, using our positions to empower our own communities. In this case, that from what we've talked about, it's not what happened. Mm-hmm. She could urge us as much as she wants for us to go watch the movie and see if it's any different, but the narrative is there. Like there's nothing behind it that you would feel empowered to go do, that it would change the outcome of the narrative and the stories that are already put out in the media. There's another interesting one called Siempre Bruja, or Always a Witch, that's on Netflix.
That bullshit.
And that bullshit, which I thought was also ridiculous, is interesting.
So is this the one that you watched?
This is the one that I watched, and I watched it for research purposes because I was really curious to see what the storyline would end up being.
Okay, so for all the uninitiated, again, I was not here when she watched these things.
He was not.
No, actually,
because I would have been pissed.
No, to be honest, the trailer doesn't tell you much. To be completely honest, the trailer doesn't tell you much except for the second trailer. It tells you at
the
least
longer
a little
trailer.
Bit. But the snippets that I've seen, and I just saw the first snippet, and I'm like, somebody who travels through time? That's all I think about. So I'm like, all right, when the first episode is already fuckery.
Yeah, from the very beginning. And
just to give everybody like our initial thoughts, so you were just like, oh, I don't know what this is about. I saw that trailer. I saw the longer trailer. Like, you know, when you're scrolling through Netflix and then like if you stop, it plays out that whole long trailer. That's the one I saw. Oh, nah. And I was like, at first I got excited. And I was like, oh shit, it's an Afro Latina. Let's go. This is about to be, oh no,
and then you're like, no,
not about to be good. Mm-hmm. So I was excited for that representation. Again, we get caught up in that. And then you quickly realize, oh, this is some tomfoolery.
Yeah, again, another tacky, image that we're being exposed to.
Yeah. So go ahead, Lindy. So you also thought.
So the reason so when I saw it, I was just like, wait, come again? Like, why is this person? So wait, this person
is time traveling?
It's like she's a slave, and I get that she's a witch, and so she can time travel, which is awesome. Kudos for her and her power. But then you're using your power to go back and save like your slave owner's son who you fell in love with.
Let's keep it. So, let's get some backstory. First of all, in the first episode, I only saw 3 of them. I'm gonna keep it a G.
I ain't watching none of that shit. I saw the trailer and I was like, no.
I didn't want to watch it.
She gets,
and it's Spanish language, right? Like it's not like it just has like English. Yeah,
it's a Colombian.
That's why like when you first watch the trailer, you're just like, oh. Yeah. And I think like there's either voiceover or subtitles.
Yeah, because it was in Spanish. I started cooking mad Spanish shit. I was like, woo!
like, I'm about to get
I
some
don't pollo con
mofongo.
I was wilding. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. But then when I saw it, like the first episode, she's incarcerated. She's in these slave tacky clothes, and it's basically looks like a potato sack. That's basically what it looks like. What she's wearing. She's in.
They couldn't give her a belt to cinch her waist.
Nothing. Like they put her in jail, and then when she comes out of that jail cell or whatever the case is, because she's being tried for being a witch. That's what it was. And the slave master's son, who wants to save her, gets shot, and she goes like, "Oh my god, no!" And then they burn her on the the stake.
They're burning her at the stake,
and then that's when she goes 100 years forward in time into the future. So you're like, wait, what? And then throughout that first episode, she wants to go back to
the entire show is her going back to save this guy. The entire show. And so, but then there's like some interesting themes that come about around like
interesting themes.
Yeah,
like,
so
because it's not
themes.
the way they get you is that it doesn't solely focus on that.
Exactly.
Like when the trailer starts, it's at least the long one. It's her in current day, and she's like trying to control her powers now, and like she has friends around her, and they're just like, "Oh, what's going on with you? Like you're being so weird." She's like standoffish, and then it goes into her backstory, and you find out, oh, she was a slave, and now she's like time jumped. So it's not just bam in your face, like this is fuckery. There's a whole story that we're gonna mask this fuckery with.
Yeah, and on top of that, it gets into more fuckery because somehow she stumbles into town and then goes back into her slave quarters that now is a hotel. And yes,
it's the same exact place.
It's the current day now is a hotel, and
that's believable.
And she talks to the hotel owner saying, "I could work for free if I could stay." And where she stays is in a closet in the hotel that used to be her room in the slave quarters.
She's like, it feels like home.
True.
What?
Without getting beat.
Lena, am I making any of this up?
Nope, that's exactly how it goes.
Exactly.
And so those are the interesting themes that I'm trying to talk to.
Girl, you were so lucky you wasn't watching this near me, because if I was,
you would have turned that shit off so quick.
Turn this shit off. You might as well read a book.
Read a book.
Yeah, because I'm going to be reading a book as I was unpacking our apartment.
What the?
Anyway.
You're watching?
That sounded really personal. That sounded like an attack. So what the fuck was I supposed to do?
Watch something else.
Lena will say she'll go into the bathroom for 3 hours and goes and just
watching it on her
Netflix.
Phone, like,
Definitely
I have to hide this from
I
him.
would not do that. But anyway,
He's like, I paid for this television too. Fuck you. Netflix is under my name. What up?
You know, Netflix is actually under her name, but the Hulu's under mine.
Exactly. She's like, I'm gonna watch what I want to watch.
Yeah, the Hulu's under mine.
And then I'm gonna watch it under your profile just to fuck with your recommendations.
If you guys want to get,
I would reset.
If you guys want to get a free subscription, go to BawdyBody/Netflix with Lena codes.
that does not exist.
That's not a thing. Because then when people start cursing,
it's like, wait, you guys are posting fake promo codes and stuff.
What if it worked though? That'd be funny.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. But anyway, so like the themes around it, yeah, okay. So she goes back to live in her slave quarters. She's working for free. And she's like, there's all these themes around like, well, she's like now in current day, she's a woman and she can go to college. And like, she couldn't have ever done that or dreamt about doing that from where she was from. But so there's all these things that are just like, the narrative of it is just like, well,
you're so much
we really
luckier now.
Couldn't have this story just be about a Black woman that travels into the future. We really had to have the slave like master relationship being at the crux of everything that happened.
Definitely
could
have left that out.
And that didn't even need to be an element of the story at all.
And also we have to remember these slave masters could do anything. So hiding out, being with a slave, that makes no sense. Historically speaking, they've been with multiple people. You know, these slave masters literally slept with multiple slaves. So this whole thing about, oh, I'm in love and we're trying to run away. He didn't need to, that element of the story didn't need to be a part of anything.
It's it was definitely one of those cases where it's just like not all white people. That was very much a not all like slave owners.
She could have gone just been a superhero or something.
She could have just
that would have
stayed
been
in the
way
future.
better than like.
She could have just stayed in the future.
Or even if it's just like, I'm going back in time to save my family. Yeah. I'm going back in time to stop this shit. Yeah. Like, stop slavery. I'm going back in time to save the man that I loved. You still gonna burn.
She could have done a
dummy.
She could have done a Jax.
I'm mad.
I don't know if you guys know what that is.
What?
Okay. Mortal Kombat came out like a couple of weeks ago, right? Okay. One of the endings for the black character was going back in time and stopping slavery.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
That was a huge backlash saying that, oh my God, Jax is racist now.
Nah.
You had a bunch of white people coming out saying that now Mortal Kombat Jax is racist because he wants to stop slavery.
Shut up.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
No. Stupid.
It's insane.
And I see this I see this from the lady standpoint where it's just like, that also makes ladies look crazy though, because it's just like, oh well, I have all this power, but I'm gonna go back in time.
All you can do is to use it for a man. Like, no, like you could have used it in so many other ways.
There's so many different layers to this. It's just like, I mean, wow. All right.
And so to get into that, right? So this is based on, so Netflix approached the author of the book. So this whole story is based on a book written by Isidora Chacon. She's a Costa Rican author.
Please.
I don't know what her book is exactly about because in everything, I wasn't going to read the book because I was already done with my research with looking at the movie because I had found enough of the point that I want to make is that Netflix basically got in touch with her to get ownership over her book to base the storyline of the show. And so I think it's loosely based on the book. It's not 100% based on the book.
Okay.
The actual writer of the screenplay, like the actual show that made it to the screen through Netflix, his name is Bob Buchholz.
Enough.
And he is some white dude from Norwalk, Connecticut.
Yeah.
I could have told you that.
So it's like everybody's like getting super excited about like, oh my gosh, an Afro-Latina protagonist, like this is great. There's like this is doing so much to tell the story that we want to tell. It's really not the story that anybody wants to tell because it was written by a man that has no idea what that story and that narrative even is.
What's his name again?
Bob Buchholz. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
He sounds like he has 2 dogs and eats mayonnaise all day. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, he does.
He's like, he was born in 1957.
Okay.
So like, there's like a lot already there.
So what about the second person?
The second
the co-writer?
person?
Is there a co-writer?
Yeah.
The second person, she's a white looking Latina. Her name is Ana Maria Parra. And so what I suspect is that she just translated it from the English version that Bob would have written into the Spanish version. So I don't think that she had any sort of like, and again, it's like, well, was there anybody on this team that could have said, hey, like, this is not the story that this audience wants to see?
This is why representation matters.
Because this is a Colombian. So the studio that ended up, producing this movie or the show is Caracol, which is a Colombian subsidiary kind of thing. Like they're based in Colombia. And so there's been like a lot of uproar around this one too. It's just like what's like the whole point of this movie, because like there is this Afro-Latina lead actress and it begs to like kind of brings into question, well, was casting just done to get attention? Because there's nothing in the storyline like that would cover anything that anybody in the audience would care to really like talk about.
I'm very interested in something. Like we're talking about it and we're just, 4 people. But I'm interested in wondering how did the Latin diaspora take this?
That's what I'm about to get into.
Okay, cool.
So there was a question around like, why is the concept of just like, why couldn't it just be the story around an Afro-Latina traveling in time? And so I said this before, like, why couldn't it have just been about basically her traveling through time, seeing the impact that technology has had, seeing that impact of like having access to like education in the university? Like, why wasn't there a story around that without having to have the slave owner relationship in the middle of it. So I kind of said that before. So there was a lot of like questioning around like, why is this even relevant? There was also the point of view that like she was basically like the lead actress. So her name and her role in the show is Carmen, but Carmen's blackness or her being black is just a reason to get people to watch it. And it's overlooking anything.
So it has no role in the show.
It has no role into the show. It was basically just tacky in terms of getting the viewership of the people that they thought it would be appealing to. But then it's just continuing the white savior master slave narrative. It's not changing the conversation that people want to be having in terms of representation in the media, or the representation of like Afro Latinas and the story of more empowerment that they could bring if the story was tweaked to really make it more about her and her power, instead of the fact that she wanted to go save her white slave son, like person in the story. And so it hasn't really had a positive like review from most people. They're like, well, the storyline seems okay, but then again, like, what does this mean for the like? And these are different because there's different people that have written about it
on Twitter. It went crazy. Even on my Instagram when I posted it, I said as host. I said, so Netflix has a show called Siempre Bruja. You know, it's the same. You know, always a witch. It's about an Afro Latina who time travels in present day now to, you know, go back in time and stuff. So I basically go down the whole list, and these are the comments I got. What the fuck? Shake my head. I can't even. Shrug emoji. Straight trash. And this is my favorite one. I actually liked it. Thank God I can't speak Spanish. Just leave the shit over there in the Spanish section.
It has subtitles, asshole.
It was
for real.
It's garbage. And this is just on Instagram. On Twitter, it had its own hashtag, and I was following it. And everybody, even from the Latin community, was saying, "What in the fuck?" But this is the crazy part. The only people who were saying that are the ones who were less melanated to more melanated. All the people who is actually for this and not seeing an issue with that, the more Anglo-looking Latin people.
Right.
Which is insane, which goes back to the image that white supremacy has done. You feel what I'm saying? So it's, I got more followers. So it's crazy.
But so it's like, and so when you ask Wesley, like, how was it perceived in like the Latino community? There really isn't one.
There was no
perception
support for it, though. Overall, you can say that there was not overwhelming support for it. Then.
Yeah.
Okay. Even from the Latin community to outside the Latin community, it was basically looked negatively. It wasn't looked as something positive.
Or
whatsoever.
a win for representation or any of that.
Yeah.
They tried it though. I'm gonna give them that.
Well,
because at first glance, we were all like, "Oh shit!"
Netflix should like Netflix. If Netflix was really so, obviously Netflix only cares about getting more people to watch their shit.
Yeah,
like that's all they care about. If Netflix actually cared about promoting a different type of narrative and content,
what you mean being socially responsible?
They wouldn't have hired
quality
Bob Bolchholtz from Norwalk to write this story.
But here's devil's advocate. They're gonna say we have 13. You know, the documentary 13. We have When You See Us. You know, you're gonna have those type of people.
Yeah, but who worked on those?
Exactly.
Like that's the important part.
Exactly.
You have to have the same level of quality people working on these things that you expect to represent.
So don't try it.
Yeah. Like 13 wouldn't be what it is. When They See Us wouldn't be what it is. The Khalif Browder story wouldn't be what it is.
By the way, those 3 documentaries, amazing.
If you haven't watched them, watch them.
Amazing. Yes,
watch them at a point in time where you don't think you're going to have to be around white people for at least 2 days.
Yeah.
You need some time to recover from it.
2 days. It is trying.
Talking about the Khalif Browder, I actually am in contact with a person that knows his brother.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, so just a little sneak peek. That might be a future episode.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
I actually am in contact with somebody, and we're working on stuff, but I shouldn't talk that much. But yeah.
All right.
That would be dope. I'd listen to that for sure.
So yeah, so that's another one where it's just like, oh man, like we really need to be taking more control of our narrative and sort of like coming up with our own content and titles that really get to the crux of the issues that we actually want to have a conversation about.
Also, I'd like to say, we know I haven't read the book, but looking at the description, the book mentions nothing about her being a slave or saving. Like that whole thing was definitely all fabricated. It doesn't seem to be having based on the book.
I was like, why are we doing this science fiction shit? Like, you going through time and then like you got to go back through time. I'm down. I like a good cool science fiction story. That whole time hopping. You escape.
The purpose is trash.
Escape.
Yeah.
Okay, you've escaped.
Right, but what Maddie's saying is that her being a slave and escaping is not a premise of the book.
Oh, well,
not from what I'm
better.
I did have to use Google Translate, so it could have left something out. I'd have 2 Spanish speakers here. Can y'all tell me if that's what I can tell like this whole translation isn't perfect.
It says mofongo. Arroz con pollo. Watch Manny gonna try. She's like, ¿A dónde está la biblioteca?
But first of all, what y'all need to know is that I've been practicing my Spanish on Duolingo, so don't come for me, but check me in about a year.
You're gonna sound like Rudy Giuliani. Have you ever heard?
I also the reason why I hate trying to speak Spanish.
So weird.
He goes like translator. I got this. Like I swear to God. I'm like,
Me llamo es Maddie. Yo tengo. No, I don't sound that bad, but I can't roll my R's, which is why I ended up quitting Spanish in the first place. Because you know how stupid you sound when you can't roll your R's? You sound dumb as fuck. And I'm like,
can you
no.
Yeah,
What y'all not gonna do is make me look stupid on this podcast.
Demonstrate for us, Chewbacca.
I literally dropped an entire language course because of this. I'm not about to put myself on blast. The most I will tell y'all is I can't do that. I sound like I'm struggling. Like it's so just funny. Like, I'm sorry, you trying to spit? What are you doing? No, I was trying to say a word. Yo, even on Duolingo, I'm like, that's not happening. Next.
I don't think Spaniards could do that, right? They have a list like espita.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, yeah. I could do that.
That's the worst accent. I can't.
Like that? You sound, man.
It's weird.
So moving on to the next one.
Sorry, guys.
I'm not even gonna tackle this. I'm gonna let y'all start it off. This is
you talking about LaQuisha?
Oh, geez.
I had to say it with the blackness. LaQuisha.
Let y'all start it off. I'll go into. I'll hit in the end.
So this is a more recent one. Most of these are bullshit, relatively.
Yeah, they're all. Most of these are from either late last year or this.
Yo, why you mad?
You want to talk about it?
Wesley big mad.
Do you blame him?
Wesley came out of nowhere. Just bullshit. Like, you really sounded like a Chad who we just told you, like, we ran out of pale ale or something. Yeah. Like, this is bullshit.
And I'm thirsty.
You guys ran out of avocado toast?
What, motherfucker?
Y'all gotta stop trying to come for avocado toast.
Avocado toast.
I mean, when they stop charging $16 for it, we can stop make funning of
Yo,
it.
y'all mad bougie. $16 for some fucking
I don't.
toast.
We didn't say we paid it. We're just saying.
Yeah, I did. Y'all
I
both
don't
did.
No, I've never paid for
I've never
I
paid
make
for
avocado toast at home is what I say.
Ooh, y'all lying. All right, I'm gonna pull these receipts.
Shit, we about to he might get it.
I don't know what receipts he's pulling.
We talking about green juice and we talking about acai bowls. We talking about that extensively.
So welcome back to the hypocritical podcast.
Anyway, we already said we bougie. All right.
Yeah.
Look,
3 butlers, guys. 3.
I don't live here, guys. I'm gonna say that again. I don't live here.
She lives upstairs.
Shut up.
I need an oxygen tank just to breathe in there. That's how high the altitude is.
Homeboy definitely came in here. Was just like, I have another level of internet service or of cell service I've
like,
never had before.
5G? What the hell?
Like the rest of you peasants only have 4G LTE.
I walked in here. They said, "What's up, broke boy?" Like, okay.
No. Okay, chill.
Okay, so talk about this. I can't
movie.
even. I don't even know where to start with this one.
The movie that it was trending a few months ago, maybe it was when it was supposed to be released. The title of this movie is LaQuisha.
Oh, jeez.
And the whole premise is there's a white gentleman who is down on his luck.
He's racist.
And he's down on his luck, and he's trying to pay for his kids' tuition.
Wow.
At a school. But he can't find a job, like a steady job that will pay him enough to do it. He sees an ad for a radio show. He sends in a demo. He doesn't get it. Then he hears that they're looking for women of color. And he decides he could sound like a woman of color, in particular, a black woman.
Okay, this is where Wesley puts in that snippet.
Yes. So, Wesley, go now. This is what
some bullshit, man.
Oh, okay. Cool. So, yep, that's what happens. He decides, oh, I could be a black woman.
Oh, my God.
I could, and he decides to do an advice type show where people call in and he's giving advice from the perspective of a black woman.
What?
But he's not just a black woman. Like, I am a black woman. No. He has to make it as stereotypical and offensive to black women as possible. Starting with the name Loquisha, because he starts off and he's like, "My name is Loquisha."
Let's start with that name.
The fuck,
Loquisha. I'm pissed off just even saying it. He couldn't just say something else.
He could have went with Keisha.
He could.
We would have been good with that.
Yeah, Keisha.
Like
he could have
Stacy,
Ashley. He could have went.
There are black women with all of these names.
Yeah, he could have went with something way totally different.
He wanted to go as quote unquote ethnic as possible.
If he wanted to, even get creative, Mimi, something like that.
I worked with a Mimi. She was really nice.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Something. But no, he has to go really, really, really ghetto.
Yeah,
and not only ghetto, but he has to be stereotypical with the name. And
there are a lot of,
you know what I'm saying?
There are a lot of professional women out there with these unique names. And I'm not going to call them hood because I love it. I'm so here for it. If your name is Loquisha, if your name is Keisha, if your name is any kind of
Isha.
All the Ishas, all of them.
Any sort
if there's
of like
Q's,
two names
K's,
that have been brought together.
Yes, I'm here for all of it. I love it. But, and again, there are a lot of professional women with these names that are living their best lives.
Yes.
But by saying that, having a name like that, you can only be this kind of person is where I have a problem. Because that's essentially what he's saying. He's like, I need to sound as black as possible. So I'm going to go with Loquisha. And then the voice that he uses, the tone, the mannerisms, all of it is the most stereotypical parts of blackness. And as a black woman, I can say, I'm tired of this shit. I'm so tired of being portrayed so one-dimensionally. Mm-hmm. Black women are so complex. There's so much to us. We are not all one and the same. I'm not going to front. When I saw the name, yes, the Brooklyn came out. I was like, yeah, Loquisha. Like, when I say, it was just like, hi, it's Maddie. And I'm talking to Loquisha. Like, yes, there's that difference. But it doesn't define me and it's not limiting. But that's what this movie is. It's just like, oh, as a black woman, here's what black women have to sound like. And here's what black women have to do. And again, remember, the premise is he needs a chance and he's taking an opportunity that was meant for a woman of color. Because as a white man, he feels like he should be able to do whatever the fuck he wants. As if we haven't been living in this world all this time where white men feel like they can do whatever the fuck they want to women of color.
Say things like, I'm transracial, get box braids and say, I'm black now.
You talking about that crazy chick from Washington? Seattle?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
You talking about Dolezal?
Yeah.
Yep.
First of all, what you're not going to do is act like Rachel Dolezal isn't black. Rachel Dolezal told y'all she black.
No, she not.
Okay.
She definitely
I don't know.
She straight up used the hashtag be yourself.
Okay.
And herself is black.
The fine print says, I'm telling you right now, Maddie been taking a little bit of some bath salts. So.
Y'all can't tell Rachel Dolezal nothing. Homegirl was heading up the NAACP.
Best believe.
Come on, son.
Best believe.
She blacker than him.
Best believe when she goes.
I don't believe any of this.
Best believe when she goes to court for welfare fraud, she's gonna.
She take them braids out real quick.
She's gonna take them braids out. She's like, "Oh my god, I did not know."
Hi, my name is Rachel.
Exactly.
She's not gonna be like, "Yeah, my name Rachel."
Exactly.
She's gonna take all of that out.
Exactly. So
you remember the interviews with her family, and they're just like, "We don't know what's going." we don't know why she's doing this. Like her family was lily
her
white.
Family is just like she doesn't understand what she's doing, but it's not cool.
We don't know where this came from.
This
We
is
don't
what
know why she's
happens when
doing
someone
this.
doesn't have culture and they get a little bit of black penis.
Ooh.
Am I going too in? I'm
Black
sorry.
penis is an amazing thing. I always say that. Thank God I was already black. I didn't have to pretend.
That's probably what it is. She got a little taste and she was like, I am black. You know?
I will say that whole, I know they say like Haitian by penetration. I hate that shit. Have y'all heard that?
I've not heard this ever.
So when
but maybe
someone that are
reading it.
non-Haitians will say, oh, I'm Haitian by penetration because they've slept with a Haitian man. And it's just like, no.
That's
bitch,
not how it works.
It's not how it works.
At all.
You're still whatever the fuck you was before you had sex with that man. Like, no, you're not. Can you cook? Do you know our struggle? What year were we founded?
Yeah.
By who? Who led the... You don't know shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Out
like,
of my face.
but okay, so
What's
only
his name?
Haitians say that.
Dessalines?
Okay,
Was it Dessalines? So
look at you. Get it.
Oh, okay. I don't
Like, what are we doing here?
you know what I mean?
That was great.
1804. So.
Get him. Yes. What day?
gotta
What
say.
day? You about?
I don't know the date.
That's the easiest part.
Easiest part.
I guess.
It is.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I need the date.
January 1st, man. January
Okay.
1st.
There you go. January 1st.
Super Shamu. Don't forget it.
That's
No, but yeah,
delicious.
Haitians have a very unique and strong history. Without the Haitians, Latin people wouldn't even be independent.
Say it again. You don't actually have to say it again. I'm just.
I was Latin people wouldn't be.
He's like, I'm not just saying this because there's a Haitian girl sitting next to me and I don't know what she might do.
I really mean this.
I am sweating actually right now.
He's like, I'm a little nervous. Not making any sudden moves. Yeah,
but with this terrible movie too, like because we were talking about images. If you
ooh, the
Google
title, the cover,
the
yes.
cover, yes, where
Gorgeous.
because it's literally this white man's face bursting through a black woman's face. And they make her look
overweight black woman at that.
and they
I
make her
believe.
look like she's the craziest person. Like she's just a lunatic. Like it's the worst image. And there's like this guy just like coming through it like that.
And he's smiling, looking all normal and shit. Like, oh, so we're the crazy ones.
Remember, images are very important. White supremacists like to do these little backhanded compliments. So whenever we say, hey, there's not a black woman as a model or as a lead, they're going to be like, all right, not a problem. Hey, the main person from Precious, come here. Now there's a black woman there. You know, these little small backhanded compliments. If you guys think I'm reaching, whoever saw the movie of Black Klansman,
I saw it.
I didn't see it.
I saw it.
What? I saw it like
I
3
wanna
times.
see it, though.
It was really good.
It was like really good.
One of the racist,
Definitely watch it.
One of the racist guys' wife, she was overweight, pudgy, overweight. Right?
Yeah.
I saw an interview with David Duke, where they interviewed him, saying how were you portrayed and all this other stuff. The first thing he said was, "I didn't like the image of that white woman being portrayed as pudgy, overweight, and non-attractive." So if he is saying that,
Wow.
we are
Show
not
that it
reaching
matters.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Feel
By
what I'm
being
saying?
offended when you have an overweight black woman as the caricature that you're using for a movie like this. Like, it speaks to so many people. And for anyone who tries to act like we're being sensitive or defensive by this or not being appreciative of those opportunity, quote unquote, opportunities, like, no, because it's actually, it's undoing all of the hard work that people have actually done up till now. There are how many people that have fought for representation by giving us some bullshit representation like any of these shows and movies that we just talked about.
It's not real
because now you've made a
representation.
joke out of people's true struggles. Like I said before, I still do not know the story of people of color during Nazi Germany. There was no reason for this woman who is powerful in her own right to be going back in time to save her oppressor. We can't ignore the fact that this Loquisha movie is sitting here essentially, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like praising this white man for taking an opportunity from an actual woman of color. that already doesn't have as many opportunities, especially in a media space, as white men do.
Yep.
And then his reaction to the backlash is priceless.
I have black friends.
He's
is
like,
essentially what he said.
he's like, I have black friends. Oh, this was just supposed to be just like white chicks. Like there was no uproar about white chicks. Like I don't get it.
Yeah, and then even the black people that were in this other thing, the black people that were in the movie, because there were black people in this movie, they also were defensive about it. And it's just like, no, you guys are taking it wrong. That's not what it was meant to be. And we were talking about this before we started recording, where it's just like, maybe if it had come out in the time that it was meant to, it could have been smoothed over more. But as of right now, where you have more people that are aware and vocal about this kind of fuckery, no, it's not going to slide.
No. And it shouldn't.
At all.
And that's why we're talking about it, is because this isn't the representation of our people that we want or that we need in order to make progress. And so we were talking about what white supremacy is. All of these movies bring forth how white supremacy manifests itself in entertainment and how it starts to create these images that impact people psychologically. So for you, like as a person of color, that's like, let's say you're like a little girl that's seeing these movies, you're basically saying, oh, well, I'll be okay as long as I fall in love with a white man. Oh, geez. Because it's going to be okay as long as I'm with a white person, because white people are our saviors, and only they can really save us, because nobody else is telling a story that's any different from that.
Angry right now.
Or even just to be like, it's not that bad. I feel like that's what these movies really, that's the narrative they really push. Like, oh, you're being oppressed. It's not that bad, because love is going to make it was a long time
ago. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I never owned slaves. Like, you were never a slave. You know, stuff like that.
Or the latest one is, no one's alive that is responsible for it.
Oh,
yeah.
Can't forget that one.
Everybody that's alive is still responsible for it, which is the craziness of it.
And I think is the perfect response for that is, yeah, you're right, but you're still benefiting from the past.
Yep.
You're still benefiting from those trials and tribulations that black folks, built this country. Remember, America wasn't America until black folks got here.
Yep.
We built this shit for free.
No America whatsoever. There was a wilderness. That's all it was.
It was white people killing natives. That's where it was here before black folks came.
Exactly. So, when we really talk about, well, you guys, were brought to America. No, there was no America. Black folks built America.
Yep.
So when they say, hey, it was not that bad, they never say that to a Jewish person. I dare someone say that to a Jewish person. It's not that bad.
If somebody just takes that statement that you made as a clip, there will be like a whole uproar. Be like, he said that the Holocaust wasn't that bad. Yeah. First of all, that's not what I said.
That's not, yeah.
But just saying that, it would be like a crazy uproar.
Man, it's going to be like, everything that Radical Latino said is not representative of me.
Keep playing. That's exactly what's about to happen. The views stated by a Radical Latino are not representative of the Bold and Bawdy cast.
And so, I mean, with these three movies, like, essentially there's one common theme that we keep seeing in these movies.
White people are awesome.
Who?
If y'all could see the way Lena D and Wesley, oh shit, I didn't even see. Just looked at me. I was just joking, guys. God.
Remember, bath salts.
But
wait until you meet my boyfriend.
That's exactly like what boyfriend?
He white. What up?
Oh Jesus, she doing all the extra today. Anyway. But it's exactly what these movies are doing, though. It's like they're pushing people to worship whiteness.
He's from Connecticut.
He has 2 dogs, and he runs in the rain.
He does.
So how do you feel about that, Maddie?
Well, he doesn't see color, so that's why we get along so well.
Oh, no.
It's great.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yo, I don't know what you just smoked.
Yo,
Maddie.
deadass. If y'all know, if I ever came with a boyfriend like that, it has to be like, yo, Maddie just got abducted by aliens.
It's like, that is not her.
This is not her.
Nah,
what the fuck is going on?
Where is she
like,
really?
Where's her pick? Where is any of her blackness? Be like, no, guys, none of that matters anymore. I brought potato salad. It has raisins in it. Like,
Ew,
that's
that
it.
sounds disgusting.
And apples. Like, oh yeah. If I go, I'm gonna go all the way white.
Oh.
Like,
Is the potato salad thing really a thing?
that's
though?
a thing. They really do be
Okay.
putting raisins and apples and all
Oh my
kinds
God.
of
I have
weird
no
shit
idea
in
what
it.
that stuff is, but
Man, Carrie need to chill.
Look, the fact that they use relish as an actual seasoning just says everything that I need to know about their cooking. I've never used relish in anything. Except tartar sauce? Do you use relish in tartar sauce?
hot dogs maybe. Like
I
some people
don't even put it
relish
on
hot
I don't even
dogs.
know what.
I'm just saying, like, to
relish
use it as a...
Oh.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what that is.
Exactly, because we use real seasonings. We use Maggi.
It's like
We use
chopped
sazon.
up. No,
Like-
but, no, here. So relish is chopped up pickles in like
Oh.
a sauce thing, which I'm not quite sure what it is.
I'm not quite sure.
White people right now are screaming at their radio.
They're like, what do you mean you don't use relish?
They're so racist.
You don't put raisins in your potato salad? No, Karen. I don't.
I don't. Either.
I am
Shit.
no interest in ever doing that.
Watch, next cookout. That's what I got. I'm bringing a white boy and some raisin potato
What the
salad.
We're gonna kick you out if it's
Oh my
our
God, like,
if it's our barbecue. You're kicked out.
My mic is like.
Yo, your mic gave up on me.
Yeah,
Your mic's like, I'm
my
done with
mic
this
is
bitch.
like done.
I'm sorry. I was completely sidetracked. Woo.
But
Back to your
I mean,
point.
I think you made a really good example of how you're now worshiping whiteness, so it worked. And
Oh, yeah,
so-
that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
How that's the...
Yes. And so
Yeah.
we need to find ways that this content, when it comes, when it's released, that we talk about it and we challenge it and we don't support it financially. Even though
Absolutely.
even though I kind of financially supported it through viewership, but for research purposes. But I think
it's definitely important, like, when we see these things, to call it out and to not support it.
right.
Like, it's crazy because so many of these shows would have and movies would have like flown under the radar and been released and been perfectly fine and nobody would have ever said anything. But then we see it and it's just like, hold up, wait. This is not okay.
And you know what's true? Like another good point too that I just thought about. So the whole being under the radar. So like these haven't been under the radar because communities of color actually spotted them. They
Mhm.
started speaking against them. But what we're also failing to kind of get into is the fact that, well, were these movies created for us to watch anyway?
We were probably not the target demographic.
We were not likely the people that they were intending for us to watch it.
I call this black struggle porn.
The fuck?
Yeah, that's how I call it. That's how I define it because we're not the ones that's supposed to be watching. I feel like the white majority who watches this get off on seeing us struggle, seeing us being portrayed in a negative light, seeing us in destitute positions, and they get off on that. And guess what?
Because it supports the narrative that they've already created for themselves.
So that's maybe we could call it something different, but that's how I call it. Because let's be honest, if this doesn't make money, they would not continue on making it.
That's true.
And it ends up making money for them anyway because they have all these other people that are watching it. And it really calls into how it supports the concept of white supremacy as well. It's because, well, white people are watching it. They're seeing that they're basically like being validated for how they feel.
Yeah.
And it's basically like the Trump effect, right? Like people are fine. Like he's actually saying what they're thinking.
What they've been thinking.
This show is actually portraying white people how they see themselves as they should be portrayed, and people of color being like, stepped on or being used as tools and pawns for the narrative and stories that they want to tell. And then if they do happen to have a person of color that ends up watching it, an element of there too is like the brainwashing effect that it could have. So it's like, oh, well, if you grow up seeing these images of white people being the savior, being the ones that are always like doing something good for the world, and then you see people of color as like always in these positions of being of the lower class or not having the power to do anything, you grow up thinking that that's what your role is in society. And then you're not going to do anything to change the status quo. And that's exactly what white supremacy is intended to do. Yeah. So in all, it's like essentially ways that they empower themselves, but we have to find ways to like empower ourselves and also love like who we are and self-love and like basically challenging when we see this. But then we also need creators that are then going to like put out content that actually tells the story as it's supposed to be told.
Absolutely.
So like 13 and like the other documentaries that we were talking about before, they're actually, you know, written and produced and directed by content creators of color.
Right.
And like that's exactly
or allies. Because we do have to, like we said it before, there are some white people who create these stories that actually do it well. So it's like if it's someone who's actually informed and is actually referring back to those communities, then okay. But if you're going to write a story from your place of whiteness as a whatever voice you want to speak from without actually consulting that person, then you're doing a disservice to the community that you're trying to quote unquote uplift.
Right.
But if you're actually doing that research, then it's just like, all right, more power to you.
No, that's true. But it all,
we would prefer if it's actually people of color, but we're not saying, hey, white people don't touch our shit.
Right. We're just saying
do it well.
Like do it well, kind of like actually tell the right stories that are meant to be told. But I think it's also powerful to encourage like people within our own communities to tell our own stories. And if we don't see content that really reflects who we are, then we should feel empowered to create it. Exactly. Yeah. But that is today's show. So once again, thank you, Radical Latino, for being here. And we were happy to be with you as well.
Hey. Thank you. No
this
problem.
was dope.
All right, so before we wrap up, people, I want to just give a big shout out to Bawdy for having me here, and for all my listeners. If you guys like what you heard and you guys want to hear more from Bawdy, remember, go to their website, bawdybody.com. That's bold and body, BAWDY.com, and show them some love on Instagram also at Bawdy. And at Bawdy, and you can also find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that. All of the links are going to be in the description down below. If this is going to be on YouTube, on the podcast, go to details. All their links for their website, Instagram, everything is going to be on the description. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Later, Gators.